I got my first like look at your work like in person, SummerSlam weekend, Toronto,
Um,
2019, and you were all over the place then. That was and like you were the standout performer to me. As I said, I walked
oh,
into a room, you were holding somebody like over your head. My wife to the left of me was like, "Whoa." Like she'd never seen it before. Uh,
right.
I mean, and then just a few months after that, the pandemic kicked in.
Oh my God, it's true.
So how has that affected you as somebody who was really emerging in the wrestling world?
You kind of like nailed it right there. I was on such a high, and to hit such a low, pretty insane. Like that summer alone started off by me landing an acting gig, and getting my acting union card, if you will. From there, being able to do a UK tour into that SummerSlam weekend, into my WWE tryout, into the end of the world. So it was like a high, 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 and then low.
So I
Yeah.
mean, like that weekend, obviously an important one because at that point you know there are people watching. I mean, Chris Harrington of AEW sit in front row for most of those shows. You've got WWE scouts popping in and out all the time. What was your mindset going into that? Because I'm sure that there were a lot of people who got their eyes on you for the first time there, and you made quite an impression.
Well, that makes me happy. Well, I'm pretty new to the business, and then I was even more new. So really, it was just making sure that I put my best foot forward and put out what it was that I could do. And it kind of makes me really happy to hear that, I made an impression on you. But yeah, so going in was I got to give it my all. But interesting fact, while those shows were going on in the evening during the day was when that WWE tryout was happening. So there was a lot going on my mind.
So they had contacted you well ahead of time, I'm sure. They had eyes on you long
No,
before this.
we got contacted like 4 weeks in advance.
Nice.
Yeah, it
So
was time to prepare.
how did that work out? Like what was the process like? Because some people, like for example, I've asked Matt Riddle about it. He's like, "Man, I blew through that thing." There are other people that are like, it was pretty tough." And then other people were like, "Well, I was physically prepared, but maybe not physically prepared for what they had."
Right. Well, I was a part of the Canadian tryout, so it's kind of hard to compare that to what happens down in Orlando because they have, a few rings set up, whereas we were in like a very discreet location with one ring. They did put us through some vigorous conditioning tests and drills, which, like I said, I came off a pretty hot summer, so I was pretty prepared for all of that. I think a lot of it was mental, though, knowing that in the evening I had accepted all these like really bomb bookings for SummerSlam weekend, thinking that that was where I was going to make my name, and then to be going into tryouts during the day. Yeah, my mind was kind of all over the place, but I would say physically, I felt like my fitness level was there for sure. Um,
So I mean, like I didn't obviously I didn't know at the time that you had that tryout, and I mean your performance it was more than up to par. It made, like I said, it made quite the impression, and I mean that was the first time I got to look at the skateboard and all that. Like you're carrying it around like as you're leaving the venue, even like how early did you know that you wanted to integrate that into what you did in the ring?
I did not want to integrate it into the
Really?
ring. Actually, it was such a sacred part of my life before wrestling that I was very, very, very against the idea of bringing it in. And it was actually one of my first trainers, Ashley Six, who was like, "Jody, don't be an idiot. This is a very easy thing to go off of." So based on me trusting him, I kind of went with it. Definitely still don't want it as my gimmick. I've actually been trying to like move. It's hard to say I want to move away with it,
Yeah.
whereas I've not wrestled very much in the last like year with the end of the world and everything. But my goal is to transition a little more away from that. Like, sure, there can be elements of it, but
Yeah.
I don't want the focus to be my skateboard anymore. Like I said, different era of my life, which I cherish, and I don't know. I like to keep it separate.
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, for you to have like a, another significant athletic love like that and not wanting to sort of I don't want to say muddy the waters, but integrate that. But what made you give in? Like what at what point did they convince you?
Man, it just, I was coming up onto doing some student shows, and I just, I was kind of at a loss for like what kind of character I wanted. And the ideas that I had pitched, which I won't get into because they're kind of embarrassing. My trainers were like, come on, we can do better than that. And so
How
they,
embarrassing could they be?
I'm not getting into them. One
Ah,
was like a GI Barbie kind of gimmick. I know, which is like, I'm glad I didn't go there because I feel like I would have been so awkward in that. Because thinking about it, I feel like I would have had to gone with maybe attire that was a little less, inducive to athletic endeavors, if you will.
hear me
And
out. It's not that bad because WWE pitched that to Victoria one time. But she told me, she was like, before the hair versus hair match with Molly Holly, they tried to
yeah.
get her to shave her head to do that gimmick.
Oh, interesting. That's kind of cool.
So,
That's
I
kind of
mean,
cool.
if you would have
I mean,
pitched
they
that at
could
the
have been.
WWE tryout, they'd have been like, let's get this girl over here
They would
right
have bought
now.
it. Dang. I dropped the ball there. Shoot. Yeah.
So, what kind of feedback did you get from WWE when you had that tryout?
They said, keep at it. There's potential there. Keep at it. Like I said, at that point, I think I was like a year and a half into actually wrestling, so very new.
Mind-boggling.
I'm still very new. So yeah, just the typical get those reps in, kid.